Chicago glittered beneath the summer night like a city determined to hide every ugly secret behind polished glass. The rooftop of the Ashford Grand Hotel floated above it all, wrapped in soft gold lights and the quiet confidence of unimaginable wealth. Crystal chandeliers reflected against the infinity pool. Jazz drifted through the warm evening air, while servers carried silver trays filled with champagne that cost more than most people earned in a month. The city's elite smiled for cameras. Politicians shook hands with celebrities. Business moguls donated millions while making sure photographers captured every generous angle. It was called the Hope Horizons Children's Charity Gala, the most prestigious fundraising event in Illinois. Everyone important was here, except no one noticed Amelia Bennett. She stood near the back of the ballroom, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the midnight blue gown she had almost decided not to wear. It wasn't designer. She had rented it. The dress hugged the curves she'd spent most of her adult life trying to hide. Years of cruel comments from strangers had taught her how to make herself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. Tonight wasn't about her. It was about raising money for the children at Lincoln Elementary, where she had taught third grade for nearly 9 years. One of her students had secretly submitted her name for the Community Hero Award. She still couldn't believe she'd been invited. Her principal had insisted. "You deserve one evening where people celebrate you, Mia." She had smiled. She wasn't so sure. Around her, conversation slowed as elegant women in custom gowns glanced briefly in her direction before returning to their circles. Their smiles were polite. Their eyes weren't. Mia had seen those looks before. She'd spent an entire lifetime recognizing pity disguised as manners. She reached for a sparkling water instead of champagne. The city lights reflected across the pool just beyond the ballroom doors. Beautiful, peaceful, far away from the whispers surrounding her. Maybe she could stay outside until the award ceremony started. She slipped quietly through the glass doors. Cool night air brushed against her face. For the first time all evening, she could breathe. The rooftop terrace overlooked the Chicago skyline, every skyscraper glowing like diamonds beneath a velvet sky. The infinity pool stretched toward the edge of the building, making it appear as though the water disappeared directly into the city below. Only a handful of guests wandered outside. Everyone else remained inside, chasing cameras. Exactly how Mia preferred it. She rested her hands against the polished stone railing. The wind carried distant sirens through the city below. Chicago never truly slept. Neither did its secrets. Behind her, someone laughed loudly. Another voice joined in. Then another. Mia ignored them. She had learned long ago that most laughter had nothing to do with her, until she heard it. Seriously? They invited her? Another chuckle. I thought this was black tie. It is. Then why does she look like she came for the buffet? More laughter. Her shoulders stiffened. She didn't turn around. She never did. Bullies fed on reactions. Silence always starved them. She focused on the skyline instead. One deep breath. Then another. You okay? The voice came from beside her. Gentle. Male. Older. She looked over. An elderly waiter balanced a tray of champagne. His expression carried genuine concern. She smiled softly. I've survived third graders. He laughed. I imagine adults are worse. They usually are. He offered her another glass of sparkling water. She accepted. Thank you. My granddaughter loves her teacher, he said quietly. I hope she's lucky enough to have someone like you. Something inside Mia softened. Tell her to keep asking questions, she replied. The world belongs to curious kids. The waiter smiled warmly before returning inside. For a brief moment, the loneliness disappeared. She looked toward the water again. A movement across the terrace caught her attention. Near the opposite side of the pool stood a man dressed entirely in black. Not a tuxedo. A perfectly tailored black suit without a tie. No champagne. No conversation. No smile. He stood completely still, watching the city. His posture was impossibly calm, as if nothing in the world could surprise him anymore. People instinctively kept their distance, not because he demanded it, because something about him silently warned them to. Even from 50 feet away, she felt it. Power. Danger. loneliness. The strange thing was, no one approached him despite his obvious wealth. Normally, billionaires attracted crowds. This man repelled them. His dark hair moved gently in the wind. One hand rested inside his pocket. The other held a simple crystal glass. Whiskey. He never drank it. He simply watched the skyline as though waiting for something. Or someone. Mia realized she had been staring. She looked away immediately. Stop it. He's just another rich man. She had no idea. Half the guests inside knew exactly who he was. None dared acknowledge him publicly, because, officially, Luca DeLuca didn't exist. Across the terrace, Luca noticed her. Not because of her dress. Not because of her appearance. Because she was the only person all evening who hadn't tried to impress anyone. She stood alone, comfortable with silence. Most people came to charity galas looking for business opportunities. She looked like she'd accidentally wandered into another universe. His security chief approached quietly. Boss, Luca didn't move. What? Everything is secure. It won't stay that way. The bodyguard followed Luca's gaze. The teacher? You know who she is? Our background team checked every guest. Luca remained silent. Elementary school teacher. No criminal record. Never married. Volunteers every weekend. Student nominated her. Luca nodded once. Interesting. The bodyguard frowned. You want surveillance? No. Luca answered almost immediately. Leave her alone. That surprised him. Normally, Luca trusted no strangers, especially at public events. Tonight, something felt different. He couldn't explain why. His instincts rarely questioned themselves. Tonight they did. Inside the ballroom, the charity auction began. Guests gradually returned indoors. Mia followed the crowd. The rooftop became crowded as photographers searched for dramatic skyline shots. Someone bumped her shoulder. She apologized automatically. The other woman rolled her eyes. Another shove, harder this time. Her heel slipped against the smooth marble surrounding the pool. She caught herself. Barely. The women behind her laughed. Oh my God. Careful. You almost made a wave. More laughter. Mia straightened herself. It's okay. She smiled politely. I'm fine. She took another careful step. Someone's handbag swung unexpectedly into her arm. The sparkling water spilled across the polished stone beneath her feet. Her rented heels found the wet surface. Everything happened. In less than a second, the heel slid sideways. Her balance vanished. The skyline spun. She reached desperately for the railing. Missed. Gasps echoed across the terrace. Then, a violent splash shattered the music. The cold water swallowed her whole. Her head struck the side of the pool. Pain exploded behind her eyes. She tried to breathe. Instead, water rushed into her mouth. The world dissolved into blue silence. Above the surface, hundreds of people stared. Some screamed. Some froze. Several lifted their phones. No one moved. For one horrifying heartbeat, everyone simply watched. Then someone laughed nervously. Another whispered, "Can she swim?" No answer. Mia disappeared beneath the surface again. 30 feet away, Luca DeLuca dropped his whiskey. The crystal glass shattered across the marble. Before anyone understood what was happening, he was already running. And without removing his jacket. The most feared man in Chicago dove headfirst into the pool. The splash echoed across the rooftop like a gunshot. For one impossible second, the entire charity gala froze. Crystal glasses stopped halfway to smiling lips. The jazz band fell silent. Conversations dissolved into stunned whispers. Only the shimmering water moved beneath the city lights. And beneath that water, Mia Bennett was sinking. The impact against the edge of the pool had stolen more than her balance. It had stolen her sense of direction. Everything became a blur of bubbles, darkness, and crushing silence. The elegant gown that had made her feel self-conscious all evening now clung heavily to her body, pulling her deeper with every desperate movement. She tried to kick. Nothing happened. She reached toward the faint glow above her. The surface seemed impossibly far away. Water burned inside her lungs. Her vision blurred. Somewhere beyond the muffled silence, she could hear people shouting. But no one came. Not yet. On the rooftop, dozens of guests crowded the edge of the infinity pool. Some gasped. Some screamed for security. Others instinctively reached for their phones. Call 911. Someone jump in. Where's the lifeguard? No one touch her. You'll make it worse. Everyone had advice. Nobody entered the water. Fear spread faster than compassion. Designer shoes remained perfectly dry. Tailored tuxedos stayed spotless. Expensive watches reflected the city lights. Not a single guest wanted to ruin the evening, until one man moved. Luca DeLuca didn't think. He reacted. His whiskey glass slipped from his fingers and exploded against the marble floor. The sharp crack made several guests turn toward him. Before anyone recognized the man in black, he was already running. His jacket billowed behind him like a dark shadow. Without slowing, without removing his shoes, without caring that thousands of eyes watched him, he launched himself over the edge of the pool. The water erupted around him. Cold, sharp, silent. Luca disappeared beneath the surface in a single powerful dive. His body cut through the water with practiced precision. Not panic. Training. Years ago, before becoming the invisible king of Chicago's underworld, he had survived far worse than deep water. He spotted her immediately. Her dark blue dress floated around her like shattered silk. Her eyes were closed. One arm drifted helplessly toward the bottom. She wasn't struggling anymore. That frightened him more than panic ever could. He reached her within seconds. His hand wrapped firmly around her waist. The moment his fingers touched her, something inside him tightened. She felt impossibly fragile. Above the surface, the crowd watched in disbelief. Who is that? I've never seen him before. He jumped without thinking. Is he security? No. Someone whispered. I think that's Luca. Another guest immediately turned. What Luca? The man swallowed hard. DeLuca. Silence spread faster than fear. Several businessmen instinctively stepped backward. One senator quietly lowered his phone. An older judge suddenly looked pale. A television producer stared at the man emerging from the water, as if he had just seen a ghost. Because he had. Luca DeLuca wasn't supposed to appear in public. He controlled politicians, judges, shipping companies, construction firms, casinos, half the city's ports. Everyone knew the rumors. No one had ever confirmed his face. Until tonight, Luca surfaced with Mia in his arms. Water streamed from his dark hair. His soaked black shirt clung tightly to his broad shoulders. He lifted her effortlessly against his chest. Her head rested beneath his chin, completely still, for one terrifying heartbeat. She wasn't breathing. Move. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The single word cut through the rooftop like a blade. People scattered immediately. A clear path opened without anyone being asked twice. Nobody questioned him. Nobody argued. Power had its own language. He laid Mia carefully on the marble beside the pool. Her skin had turned frighteningly pale. Wet hair covered half her face. Her lips had already begun losing color. Luca knelt beside her, ignoring the water soaking through his expensive clothes, ignoring the cameras, ignoring every powerful person watching. He gently brushed the strands of hair away from her eyes. No response. He checked for a pulse. Weak. Far too weak. Ambulance. One of his bodyguards was already speaking into an encrypted phone. 3 minutes. Too long. Luca's expression never changed, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. He tilted Mia's chin, placed 2 fingers beneath her jaw, carefully opened her airway. The crowd watched in stunned silence. No one expected the feared Mafia Boss to know emergency medicine. He leaned down. One controlled breath, then another. His hands pressed rhythmically against her chest. Once, twice, 3 times. Again, the rooftop disappeared around him. The cameras disappeared. The city disappeared. There was only one heartbeat he cared about, the one struggling beneath his hands. Across the terrace, A young freelance journalist secretly lifted her camera. Click. Another photo. Click. Another. The mysterious billionaire kneeling beside an unconscious woman. His expression wasn't cold. It wasn't calculating. It wasn't violent. It was terrified. She zoomed in. His jaw remained perfectly controlled, but his eyes betrayed something no mafia legend ever should. Fear. Real fear. 30 seconds passed. Too long. Someone quietly cried. Another guest whispered a prayer. Luca continued compressions. His breathing remained steady, his movements precise. Then, Mia suddenly coughed. A violent rush of water escaped her lungs. She gasped sharply. Her entire body trembled. The sound echoed across the silent rooftop. Several guests burst into relieved applause. Luca ignored them. He slid one arm behind her shoulders before she could collapse again. Ease. His voice became unexpectedly softer. Breathe. She struggled to focus. Everything hurt. Her chest burned. Her ears rang. She blinked slowly. The first thing she saw was a pair of piercing gray eyes, close enough to count every raindrop still clinging to his eyelashes. Strong hands supported her carefully, not possessively, protectively. She tried speaking. Only another cough escaped. It's okay. The stranger's voice remained calm. Don't force it. She stared at him. He looked nothing like the wealthy businessman inside. There was something dangerous about him. Not because of anger, because of control. Complete control. The kind of control that only existed in men who had survived unimaginable violence. Yet his hands held her as though she might break. Sirens echoed below. The ambulance had arrived. Paramedics rushed onto the rooftop carrying equipment. One young medic knelt beside Mia. Ma'am, can you hear me? She nodded weakly. What happened? Her voice cracked. I slipped. The medic checked her pupils. Possible concussion. He looked toward Luca. Sir, thank you. Luca simply stood. Water continued dripping from his sleeves. His bodyguard quietly handed him a dry jacket. He didn't take it. His attention never left Mia. The medic frowned. Sir, you should probably change before. Luca interrupted. Make sure she has a full CT scan. We will. And keep her overnight. Hospital policy. Keep her overnight. The medic blinked. Something about the man's tone made arguing seem impossible. As the stretcher rolled toward the elevator, Mia turned her head. The mysterious stranger remained exactly where she had left him, standing beside the pool, completely soaked, watching, not smiling, not speaking, just watching to make sure she was alive. Their eyes met one final time. She wanted to thank him, wanted to ask his name. Instead, the elevator doors slowly closed between them. The rooftop remained silent long after the ambulance disappeared. One businessman finally exhaled. Who was that? Nobody answered, because everyone already knew. Nobody wanted to say his name aloud. Across the street, inside a black SUV parked beneath the hotel, a man wearing leather gloves watched the entire rescue through a telephoto lens. His scarred face never changed. He lowered the camera, made one phone call. The rumors were true. A cold voice answered. And we have confirmation. Of what? The man looked toward the rooftop where Luca still stood alone beside the shimmering pool. Then he quietly replied, We finally know what makes Luca DeLuca jump without thinking. A long silence followed. Then a low chuckle. Good. Tell Mr. Moretti. We found his weakness. The call ended. The SUV disappeared into the Chicago night. Above the city, Luca DeLuca stood alone at the edge of the pool. He had just saved a stranger. He didn't yet realize. He had also started a war. The first thing Mia Bennett noticed wasn't the pain. It was the silence, not the peaceful silence of sleep. The unsettling kind. The kind that existed only in places where everyone had been ordered not to make a sound. Her eyelids felt impossibly heavy. The soft rhythm of machines surrounded her. A monitor beeped steadily beside the bed. Somewhere nearby, expensive leather shoes crossed polished marble, then stopped. She slowly opened her eyes. Everything was white. White ceiling, white walls, white sheets. Sunlight spilled through enormous floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. This wasn't an ordinary hospital room. It looked more like a luxury hotel suite. For several seconds, she couldn't remember why she was here. Then it came rushing back. The laughter, the pool, the freezing water, the stranger, those gray eyes. A nurse immediately noticed she was awake. Relief flashed across her face. Oh, thank God. She hurried toward the bed. Miss Bennett? Mia swallowed painfully. My head. You suffered a concussion. The nurse gently adjusted her pillow. You've been unconscious for almost 12 hours. 12. The doctors wanted to monitor you overnight. Mia slowly nodded. What time is it? Almost 9 in the morning. Morning. The gala. The award ceremony. Everything was gone. She let out a quiet sigh. My school. We already contacted your principal. You did? The nurse smiled. Actually, she hesitated. Someone else insisted. Mia frowned. Who? Before the nurse could answer, a sharp knock echoed through the room. 3 men in dark suits stepped inside. Not doctors, not police. Bodyguards. Every movement was synchronized. Every expression unreadable. The room instantly felt smaller. The nurse visibly stiffened. One of the men spoke calmly. Miss Bennett, our employer would like to know how you're feeling. Mia blinked. Employer? Another bodyguard stepped aside. The doorway became perfectly clear. A tall figure entered without hurry. Black, tailored suit. Silver watch. Dark hair. Controlled expression. The same gray eyes. The man from the pool. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The room itself seemed to stop breathing. Mia sat a little straighter. You. His gaze briefly swept across the heart monitor. Then back to her. You remembered. His voice was low. Calm. Almost emotionless. But beneath the restraint, there was unmistakable relief. She searched his face. I never thanked you. You don't owe me thanks. I could have died. You didn't. Simple. Matter of fact. As though risking his own life had required no thought at all. The nurse quietly excused herself. The bodyguards remained outside. The door closed. Leaving only the 2 of them, Mia finally smiled. I'm Mia. I know. She laughed softly. Of course you do. He didn't smile. I had the hospital identify you. I suppose that makes sense. Silence settled again. She noticed something strange. He wasn't looking around the room. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't distracted. He was watching her, carefully, as if making sure she was truly awake. You've been here all night? The question escaped before she could stop herself. For the first time, he looked away. No. It sounded almost convincing. Almost. She glanced toward the untouched coffee sitting on the windowsill. Still steaming. 2 cups. One already half empty. He followed her gaze. You shouldn't be sitting up. She smiled. You changed the subject. I answered. No. She folded her arms. You avoided it. A long silence followed. Then, I left. A pause. And came back. Something about his honesty caught her off guard. Why? The question lingered between them. Most people would have answered immediately. Luca didn't. He looked toward the city skyline beyond the window. I don't enjoy unfinished business. She raised an eyebrow. So, saving people is business? His expression remained unreadable. No. Then what is it? Another silence. Finally, I don't like watching innocent people suffer. She studied him carefully. There was something unusual about him. Powerful men usually wanted to impress. He seemed determined not to reveal anything at all. I'm sorry. He looked back at her. For what? I ruined your evening. For the first time, something almost resembling amusement crossed his face. You think that's what I'm worried about? She blinked. You nearly drowned. And you're apologizing. She looked down at the blanket. When people like me cause scenes. His jaw tightened. People remember. Something cold flickered behind his eyes. Who taught you that? She looked confused. What? Who convinced you that your life is less important than everyone else's evening? The question struck harder than she expected, because she didn't have an answer. Not one person. 1,000 moments. 1,000 comments. 1,000 strangers. Years of becoming invisible. Before she could respond, someone knocked urgently. One of the bodyguards entered. His face remained perfectly calm, but Luca noticed the tension immediately. What? News. The bodyguard handed him a tablet. Luca's eyes scanned the screen. His expression didn't change. That frightened the bodyguard more than anger ever could. Mia watched quietly. What happened? Luca locked the screen. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. She frowned. Considering I almost drowned, I think I deserve at least a little honesty. His chaza lingered on her. You do. Pause. But not today. After several silent seconds, he handed her the tablet anyway. She looked down. Her breath caught instantly. Every major news outlet displayed the same headline. Mysterious billionaire risks his life during charity gala rescue. Another article. Who is the man who saved Mia Bennett? Then another. A photo filled the screen. Luca kneeling beside her unconscious body. His soaked black shirt. His hands pressing against her chest. His face. Terrified. She looked up slowly. They photographed everything. Yes. You don't seem happy about that. I'm not. Because you're private? He didn't answer. Instead, he asked quietly, what do you know about organized crime? She frowned. Nothing. Good. The answer felt strangely final. Across the city, inside an abandoned steel warehouse near the Chicago River, Victor Moretti stood before an enormous wall covered in photographs. Politicians, judges, business executives, union leaders, every person connected to Luca DeLuca, every ally, every enemy, every failed assassination. One space had remained empty for 8 years. A weakness, something Luca cared about. Now, one new photograph hung in the center. Mia Bennett, water dripping from her hair, Luca carrying her from the pool. Moretti smiled. So, he can bleed. One of his captains stepped closer. What are your orders? Moretti never looked away from the photograph. Not yet. He traced Mia's face with one gloved finger. If Luca saved her, she matters. If she matters, we don't kill her. The captain looked surprised. No. Moretti's smile became darker. We make him watch. Back at the hospital, Mia returned the tablet. I still don't know your name. He looked at her quietly. You've probably heard it before. She smiled. I doubt it. My name is Luca. Luca. Something about the name felt oddly familiar. Then, her smile faded. The nurse had dropped a newspaper beside the bed earlier, folded, half hidden beneath a magazine. A small article caught her eye. The headline read, Federal Investigation into Elusive Chicago Crime Figure Continues. Beneath the headline, a single name, Luca DeLuca. She looked from the newspaper, back to the man standing beside her bed. No. Her heartbeat accelerated. The room suddenly felt colder. You. He didn't deny it, didn't explain, didn't apologize. He simply met her frightened eyes and quietly said, yes. The silence that followed was deafening. The man who had carried her out of the water, the man who had stayed beside her hospital bed all night, the man whose hands had brought her heartbeat back, was also the most feared mafia boss in Chicago. For the first time since opening her eyes, Mia wasn't sure whether she felt safer, or in far greater danger. Luca saw the fear. He expected it. What he didn't expect was how much it hurt. Outside the hospital window, black clouds rolled over the Chicago skyline. Far below, 3 identical black SUVs pulled silently into position. The war had already begun. Mia simply hadn't realized. She was standing at its center. Mia couldn't breathe. The newspaper trembled in her hands. Her eyes drifted between the grainy headline and the man standing only a few feet away. Luca DeLuca. For years, Chicago had whispered that name like a ghost story. A man with no official company, no interviews, no public speeches, no photographs. Yet somehow, every major construction project, every luxury casino, every shipping route crossing Lake Michigan eventually led back to one invisible empire. Parents warned their children never to repeat his name. Politicians denied ever meeting him. Federal agents spent years trying to prove he even existed. And now, he was standing inside her hospital room, calm, silent, watching her absorb a truth that could never be forgotten. You lied. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Luca's expression remained unreadable. I never told you who I was. You let me think you were. She searched for the right word. Normal. A flicker crossed his gray eyes. I've never been normal. Silence settled heavily between them. The heart monitor beside her bed suddenly seemed louder than before. Beep, beep, beep. Every sound reminded her she was alive because of him. That fact only made everything more confusing. You saved me. She looked directly into his eyes. And you're also the man half this city is afraid of. Yes. How am I supposed to understand that? You don't. His answer came without hesitation. You only need to understand one thing. She waited. As long as I'm here, no one will hurt you. The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it frightened her even more, because men didn't speak like that unless they truly believed they could control life and death. And somehow, she believed him. A sharp knock interrupted the silence. Luca didn't look away from Mia. Come in. The door opened. An older man wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit entered, carrying a leather folder. Silver hair, round glasses, completely composed. Unlike the bodyguards, he carried no visible weapon, but everyone in the room instinctively respected him. He inclined his head toward Luca, boss, then toward Mia, Miss Bennett. My name is Marco Bellini. I've been Mr. DeLuca's attorney for 26 years. Mia blinked. Attorney? Why would a mafia boss bring his lawyer into a hospital room? Marco placed the folder carefully on the small table. There has been an unexpected development. Luca's eyes narrowed slightly. What happened? The rescue photographs. I've seen them. Marco shook his head. No, you've seen the news. This is worse. He opened the folder. Inside were printed copies of online articles, television screenshots, social media posts, security camera stills, hundreds, thousands. Every image showed the same moment. Luca carrying Mia from the swimming pool, his face clearly visible, his hands wrapped protectively around her. One photograph had already become viral across the country. The caption read, "Who is the man who risked everything to save a stranger?" Another headline was even worse. The invisible billionaire finally has a face. Marco quietly turned another page. Mia's stomach dropped. Someone had circled dozens of comments in red ink. Find the woman. She's his weakness. If he saved her, she matters. Watch her. Some came from anonymous accounts. Others were already being investigated by federal cybercrime units. Mia looked up slowly. This is because of me? Luca answered immediately. No, it's because of me. Marco adjusted his glasses. There is something else. He hesitated. That alone caught Luca's attention. Marco never hesitated. The Moretti family. The room instantly grew colder. They've begun moving. Luca's jaw tightened. How many? 6 confirmed teams. Maybe more. Surveillance? Constant? Any contact? Not yet. Luca nodded once. They're waiting. Marco looked toward Mia. They're studying her routine. They know where she teaches. They know where she lives. They know which grocery store she visits every Thursday. Mia felt the blood drain from her face. How? Marco's answer was painfully simple. The moment your face became international news, your private life disappeared. For several long seconds, no one spoke. The city hummed quietly beyond the hospital windows. Far below, traffic continued as though nothing had changed. People laughed. People hurried to work. People lived ordinary lives. Mia realized Hers had ended the moment Luca jumped into that pool. I have to go home. She pulled the blanket aside. I need my phone. My students. Luca stepped forward. No. She stared at him. My apartment? No. My school? No. I can't just disappear. His voice remained calm. You already have. Her breathing became shallow. I have responsibilities. So do I. My life is exactly why we're having this conversation. She stood from the bed despite the dizziness. I don't even know you. No, but my enemies know you. Frustration finally broke through her fear. So what? I'm supposed to hide because criminals might be watching me? No, he answered quietly. You're supposed to survive. The words hit harder than she expected. Because there was no exaggeration, no drama, only truth. Luca wasn't trying to scare her. He was telling her what he genuinely believed. Before she could respond, one of the bodyguards suddenly pressed a hand to his earpiece. His expression changed instantly. Boss? Luca turned. What? South entrance. What about it? Black delivery van. Marco looked sharply toward the windows. It wasn't scheduled. Another voice crackled through the bodyguard's radio. Possible breach. Repeat. To possible breach. Luca moved before anyone else. Every trace of quiet restraint disappeared. His entire posture transformed. Cold, focused, lethal. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulled the curtains closed, locked the hospital room door, then calmly reached beneath his suit jacket. Mia Froze. A black pistol appeared in his hand, not waved around, not pointed, simply held with effortless familiarity, as though it belonged there. Another radio transmission exploded through the silence. Shots fired. Everything stopped. Then, 3 deafening gunshots echoed from somewhere below. Hospital staff screamed. Patients cried out. Running footsteps filled the hallway. Glass shattered in the distance. Mia instinctively stepped backward. What was that? Luca listened. Another burst of automatic gunfire. Closer. Much closer. They're early. Marco looked toward him. They weren't supposed to move today. They changed their plan. The lights flickered once. Then emergency alarms filled the hospital. A computerized voice repeated through every corridor. Security lockdown. Security lockdown. Mia's heart hammered violently. This is because of me? Luca looked directly at her. No, it's because they think you're important to me. She searched his face. Are they wrong? For the first time, the great Luca DeLuca didn't answer immediately. Gray eyes met frightened brown ones. A silence stretched between them, long enough for both of them to understand what he wasn't saying. Finally, he looked away. I don't know. That frightened him more than the gunfire. The bodyguard's radio crackled again. Boss, they're inside. Luca closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. When he opened them, the hesitation was gone. He holstered the pistol, walked directly toward Mia. She instinctively stepped backward until her shoulders touched the wall. He stopped only inches away, close enough that she could smell rain, expensive cedar cologne, and faint traces of chlorine still lingering from the night before. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. Listen to me carefully. She nodded. If anyone except me opens this door, don't speak. If anyone says they're police, don't believe them. If I tell you to run, you run. What about you? His eyes remained locked on hers. I'll catch up. She shook her head. No. A faint crease appeared between his brows. You don't understand. I understand enough. She swallowed. If they're trying to kill you, I'm not leaving you behind. The room fell completely silent. Even Marco looked up. No one, absolutely no one, had ever spoken to Luca DeLuca like that. Something shifted inside him. Tiny, almost invisible, but real. For years, people had stayed close to him because they feared him, or because they wanted something. This woman, who had known him for less than 24 hours, had just refused to save herself if it meant abandoning him. He didn't know what to do with that feeling. It unsettled him, more than bullets ever had. Another explosion shook the hospital floor. This one much closer, The lights briefly went out. When they returned, smoke drifted beneath the door from somewhere in the hallway. The bodyguard lifted his weapon. "They're coming." Luca slowly reached for Mia's hand. Not forcefully, not possessively, simply offering it. For one suspended heartbeat, she stared at his outstretched hand. Every instinct told her to run from the man the city feared. Every beat of her heart reminded her that he was also the man who had jumped into a pool when everyone else only watched. Outside the room, heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Someone screamed. A gunshot shattered the silence. Luca's eyes never left hers. "Trust me." Mia looked at the smoke creeping under the hospital door, then at the hand waiting patiently for hers. With trembling fingers, she reached forward, and just as their hands touched, the reinforced hospital door exploded inward. The reinforced hospital door exploded inward. Steel screamed against concrete. Splinters of wood and shattered metal blasted across the room. Mia instinctively ducked, covering her face as smoke poured into the hospital suite. A masked gunman rushed through the opening, rifle raised. He never fired. A suppressed shot echoed through the room. The attacker collapsed before his finger reached the trigger. Luca hadn't hesitated. One precise bullet. Center mass. The man hit the floor without another sound. For the first time, Mia saw exactly why Chicago feared Luca DeLuca. He hadn't acted out of anger or panic. He had simply decided, and someone died. "Move." His voice remained calm, almost frighteningly calm. Another burst of gunfire echoed outside the room. The hallway erupted into chaos. Hospital staff screamed. Patients cried. Security alarms wailed through every floor. Marco pulled Mia behind an overturned medical cart. "The east corridor is gone." One of Luca's bodyguards spoke rapidly into his radio. "Boss, seek confirmed hostile." Another voice answered through static. "No. 8. Luca glanced toward the hallway. "They're buying time." Marco understood immediately. For the sniper, Luca nodded once. "They know I'll protect her." He looked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The first shot won't come from the hallway. Almost on cue, the glass exploded. A high-powered rifle round shattered through the room, ripping across the wall exactly where Mia had been standing seconds earlier. Concrete dust filled the air. She gasped. "Oh my God." Luca wrapped one arm around her shoulders and pulled her to the floor before a second bullet tore through another window. Glass rained across the expensive marble. His body completely shielded hers. She could feel the weight of him. Solid, unmoving. The bullets kept coming. He never flinched. "You," she whispered against his shoulder. "You're covering me." He didn't even look at her. "Stay down." Another shot. Then another. Each impact came closer. The sniper wasn't guessing anymore. He had found them. Marco crawled toward the far wall. "Boss." The maintenance tunnel. Luca immediately looked toward him. "Still operational?" Marco nodded. It was built during the original hospital renovation. No public blueprints. Only 4 people know it exists. Luca's expression darkened. Then someone talked. He stood, ignoring the bullets striking around him, ignoring the glass cutting across his sleeves. His bodyguards immediately formed a moving shield around Mia. One of them slid aside a heavy medical cabinet. Hidden behind it, a narrow steel door appeared. No markings, no handle, only an electronic keypad. Marco entered 6 digits. Nothing happened. His face paled. They disabled it. Luca holstered his pistol, stepped forward, then kicked the door. The first impact dented solid steel. The second tore the lock completely free. The third sent the entire door crashing inward. Mia stared at him. "You just..." He looked back. "We're leaving." The tunnel beyond was cold. Dark. Concrete walls stretched endlessly beneath the hospital. Emergency lights flickered overhead, bathing everything in deep crimson. It smelled of dust and old machinery. As soon as everyone entered, Luca closed the damaged steel door behind them. The gunfire above became distant echoes. For the first time in minutes, silence returned. Only their footsteps remained. Mia struggled to keep pace. Her head still throbbed from the concussion. The long tunnel seemed to stretch forever. Finally, she slowed. Her knees nearly buckled. Before she hit the ground, strong arms caught her. Again, Luca barely looked at her before lifting her effortlessly into his arms. She blinked in surprise. I can walk. You almost fell. I'm fine. No. He adjusted his grip. You aren't. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. There wasn't a trace of embarrassment on his face. No mockery, no hesitation. He carried her as naturally as breathing, as though her weight meant absolutely nothing. Behind them, one bodyguard smiled quietly. Marco noticed. Hisaihil. In 26 years, he had never once seen Luca carry anyone. The tunnel finally opened into an underground parking garage. Only 3 vehicles waited, all identical. Black armored SUVs, engines already running, drivers standing beside open doors. One immediately approached. Boss, Route Alpha is compromised. Route Bravo? Too obvious. Luca looked toward the city map projected across the dashboard, then quietly said, We're not going home. Marco looked surprised. The mansion? They'll expect it. The penthouse? They're already watching. One bodyguard frowned. Then where? For several seconds, Luca said nothing. Then, the lake house. Every guard exchanged nervous glances. Marco looked directly at him. You've never taken anyone there. I know. Mia remained silent. She had no idea what any of this meant. But everyone else clearly did. The lake house wasn't simply another property. It was important, private, sacred. The convoy pulled out into the underground tunnel leading beneath downtown Chicago. Within seconds, they disappeared into city traffic. Rain had begun falling. Heavy, cold, the windshield blurred beneath endless streaks of water. Mia sat quietly beside Luca in the back seat. Neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt careful. Finally, she looked toward him. Did someone die? He already knew what she meant. The man in the hospital. His eyes remained on the rain outside. Yes. You killed him. Yes. The honesty stunned her. No excuses. No lies. No pretending. She looked down at her hands. She swallowed. I've never seen someone die. Luca's voice stayed low. I know. You didn't hesitate. No. She turned toward him. How? Another long silence. Then, because if I hesitate, he finally met her eyes. UD. Those 4 words settled heavily between them. She realized something chilling. From his perspective, there had never been another choice. The convoy crossed one of Chicago's old iron bridges. The skyline slowly disappeared behind sheets of rain. Mia leaned her forehead against the cool window. I don't belong here. No. Luca answered quietly. You don't. Then why am I? He looked at her, long enough for the question to become something deeper. Long enough to admit what he still refused to say aloud. Because I jumped. She frowned. What? The moment I jumped into that pool, I changed both our lives. Outside, another black SUV appeared 3 cars behind them. One of Luca's drivers noticed immediately. Boss, we've got company. Luca looked into the side mirror. Dark SUV. No license plate. Keeping perfect distance. Not ordinary traffic. He smiled. Very slightly. They found us. Marco looked alarmed. Already? They're good. The vehicle behind them suddenly accelerated. Another joined from the next intersection. Then another. Within seconds, 4 black SUVs surrounded Luca's convoy in the pouring rain. Mia looked back. Are those? Yes. Luca calmly reached beneath his jacket, loaded a fresh magazine into his pistol. The metallic click echoed through the silent vehicle. Outside, headlights cut through the storm. Engines roared. The chase had begun. Mia's heartbeat pounded. Can they catch us? Luca looked out into the rain, his expression unreadable. They're not trying to catch us. She stared at him. Then what do they want? His gray eyes remained fixed on the lead SUV drifting into position beside them. His answer came as quietly as ever. They want to see how much I'm willing to destroy to keep you alive. The first explosion erupted behind the convoy. The bridge disappeared in flames, and somewhere beyond the smoke, Victor Moradi smiled. Because the game had finally begun, the explosion swallowed the bridge behind them. Steel twisted. Glass burst outward. A wall of orange fire climbed into the rain-soaked Chicago sky, illuminating the convoy for one terrifying heartbeat. The lead SUV lurched violently. Mia grabbed the leather seat as the armored vehicle swerved around chunks of burning concrete, crashing onto the highway. Behind them, the bridge collapsed into the dark river. Cars screamed to a halt. People abandoned their vehicles. Sirens erupted from every direction. Inside the SUV, nobody spoke. Luca simply watched the rearview mirror, calculating, waiting. His expression never changed. They weren't trying to kill us. Marco finally broke the silence. They were testing our route. Luca nodded once. They wanted confirmation. Confirmation of what? He looked out through the rain. Where I'm taking her. One of the bodyguards cursed under his breath. They know about the lake house? No. Luca answered immediately. But they'll know I'm protecting something. His thumb lightly tapped the magazine inside his pistol. They'll start searching every property I own. Marco frowned. Then we should change destinations. No, they've already committed resources. If we change now, they'll know they're close. Mia listened quietly. The conversation felt less like people escaping danger, and more like chess players discussing their next move. Except every wrong move ended with someone dead. Nearly 2 hours later, the endless lights of Chicago disappeared completely. The highway narrowed into a winding road surrounded by towering pine forests. Rain softened into a gentle mist. Moonlight filtered through enormous trees. The farther they drove, the quieter the world became. No traffic, no buildings, no people. Only forest, endless forest. Finally, the convoy turned onto a gravel road hidden behind ancient oak trees. Massive wrought iron gates slowly opened. No security guards appeared. No cameras were visible. It almost looked abandoned. The gates closed silently behind them. The lake emerged through the trees, perfectly still. Its glass-like surface reflected the moon so clearly it looked as though another sky existed beneath the water. Standing beside it was the most beautiful house Mia had ever seen. Not a palace, not a mansion built to impress. A cedar and stone estate surrounded by towering pines. Warm lights glowed through enormous windows. A long wooden dock stretched across the lake. Wind chimes gently moved beneath the porch roof. It felt peaceful, almost impossible. This, Mia whispered, belongs to you? Luca looked toward the lake. No. She frowned. It belonged to my mother. The answer surprised everyone, especially Marco. Luca almost never spoke about his family. Almost never. The vehicles stopped. Bodyguards immediately spread across the property. 2 disappeared into the woods. Another activated hidden security systems buried beneath the gravel driveway. Mia stepped out slowly. Fresh pine filled the air. The silence felt unreal after the chaos of the city. For the first time in nearly 24 hours, she wasn't hearing sirens, or gunfire, or screaming. Only water touching the shore. Luca noticed her looking toward the dock. My mother used to sit there every morning. You loved her. It wasn't a question. He looked toward the lake. Very much. What happened? Silence. Long enough for Mia to think he wouldn't answer. Finally, the Mafia happened. He walked toward the porch. The conversation ended there. But somehow, she understood more than if he had explained everything. Inside, the house felt surprisingly ordinary. A stone fireplace, handmade quilts folded across the sofa, shelves overflowing with old books, family photographs, fresh flowers in glass vases, no marble statues, no golden chandeliers, no symbols of wealth. It looked like a home, not the residence of the most feared mafia boss in Chicago. Mia slowly wandered through the living room. One photograph caught her attention. A little boy, perhaps 10 years old, standing beside a beautiful woman smiling brightly beneath the same dock outside. The little boy looked familiar. Gray eyes, dark hair, a shy smile. Luca. She looked toward him. Is this you? He stopped walking. For several seconds, he simply stared at the photograph. Yes, you looked happy. Another silence. I was. Mia gently placed the frame back onto the shelf. You miss her every day. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Some losses don't become easier. They just become quieter. She looked at him. There was no mafia boss standing before her now. Only a son. A lonely son. Marco quietly entered from another room. The property is secure. Luca nodded. For now. The satellite feeds? No movement within 5 miles. Luca finally relaxed. Slightly. Good. Marco looked toward Mia. I'll have dinner prepared. She smiled politely. You don't have to. Marco actually laughed. My dear, if I return to Chicago having allowed our guests to skip dinner, the boss will probably fire me. Luca looked at him. I would. Mia blinked. Then, without meaning to, she laughed. A real laugh. Small. Warm. It echoed softly through the house. For the first time, Luca smiled. Barely. Just enough for Marco's eyes to widen. In 26 years, he had seen that smile only twice. Dinner was simple. Homemade soup, fresh bread, roasted vegetables, grilled salmon. Nothing extravagant. The atmosphere remained strangely peaceful. Until Mia noticed something. There were only 2 place settings. What about everyone else? She looked toward the bodyguards outside. They've eaten, Marco answered. They always eat before the boss. And they never enter the dining room. Why? Luca quietly folded his napkin. My mother hated eating alone, so she made everyone join her. He looked around the room. After she died, no one wanted to sit here. The loneliness in his voice lingered long after the sentence ended. Without thinking, Mia picked up the bread basket. You should have another piece. He looked at her. I don't usually eat much. You skipped breakfast. You skipped lunch. You've probably burned enough calories saving stubborn teachers. Marco lowered his eyes to hide a smile. No one, absolutely no one, had ever told Luca DeLuca to eat his dinner. Luca stared at the bread, then quietly took it. As you wish. Later that night, rain began falling again. Mia couldn't sleep. She stepped quietly onto the wooden dock. The lake shimmered beneath the moonlight. She wrapped her sweater tighter around herself. You should be inside. His voice came from behind her. She turned. Luca stood several feet away, hands inside his coat pockets. Not close enough to crowd her, close enough to protect her. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. They stood together in silence, listening to the rain, watching gentle ripples spread across the water. Finally, she spoke. Why did you really save me? He looked across the lake. I told you. No. She shook her head. You told me I was innocent. But there were hundreds of innocent people at that gala. You only jumped for one. His breathing slowed. The truth was dangerous. Not because she couldn't handle it, because he couldn't. I don't know. She smiled sadly. I think you do. Before he could answer, a faint red light flickered deep inside the forest. Once, then disappeared. Luca noticed immediately. His entire body became still. What is it? He didn't answer. Another red light, different location. 3 quick flashes. His face hardened. Marco rushed onto the porch. He had seen it too. Boss. Luca never looked away from the trees. They found us. Impossible. They're marking positions. Bodyguards emerged from every direction, rifles already raised. The peaceful lake instantly transformed into a battlefield. Mia stared toward the darkness. I don't see anyone. You won't. Luca's voice became cold again. That's why they're dangerous. Another red flash. Closer this time, hidden between the trees. Someone was watching the house. Watching her. Watching him. Luca slowly stepped in front of Mia, placing himself between her and the forest without saying a word. She noticed. He pretended it was instinct. She knew it wasn't. His hand quietly found hers, not because he wanted comfort, because he was silently checking that she was still beside him, far beyond the trees. A camera lens captured the moment. Click. A single photograph. Luca shielding Mia beneath the rain. The image uploaded instantly to an encrypted phone, miles away. Victor Moretti looked at the photograph. He smiled, then quietly whispered, "There it is. The look. I've waited 10 years to see that look." He enlarged Luca's face. The cold mafia boss everyone feared was looking at one ordinary woman, as if losing her would destroy him. Moretti leaned back in his chair. The war has finally become personal. The rain never stopped. It whispered across the surface of Blackwood Lake, turning the water into a sheet of rippling silver beneath the moon. No one inside the lake house slept. The bodyguards rotated silently between hidden positions. Infrared cameras scanned the tree line. Motion sensors blinked beneath the wet grass. Every few minutes, another red laser flickered deep within the forest, then vanished. Whoever was watching them wanted Luca to know they were there. It wasn't surveillance. It was psychological warfare. Inside the house, Mia stood beside the living room window, unable to pull herself away from the darkness outside. She could no longer tell whether she feared the forest or the man quietly sitting beside the fireplace. Luca hadn't moved in nearly an hour. He wasn't reading. He wasn't working. He simply sat there, one elbow resting on his knee, watching the dying flames. He looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally, as if the weight of protecting an empire had finally become heavier than the empire itself. "You should rest." His voice broke the silence without looking at her. "You've said that 3 times. And you've ignored me 3 times. She smiled faintly. "I guess we're both stubborn." He finally glanced toward her. "That's becoming a problem." She walked slowly toward the fireplace. "Is it?" "Yes." "Because I don't listen to you?" "No." He looked directly into her eyes. "Because you make me explain myself." The words lingered between them. Mia lowered herself into the chair across from him. The fire painted warm amber across both of their faces. For the first time since meeting him, there were no bodyguards, no gunfire, no reporters, no fear, only silence. The kind of silence that allowed dangerous truths to breathe. "Can I ask you something?" "You already are." She rolled her eyes. That wasn't the question. A corner of his mouth almost lifted. "Almost." "What is it?" She studied him carefully. "When was the last time someone argued with you?" He didn't answer immediately. Finally, "My mother." She blinked. "Seriously?" "Everyone else obeys. Because they're afraid." "Yes. And you don't like that?" His gaze returned to the fire. "I don't care." She shook her head. "I think you do." Another silence. Then, "I've spent 20 years making sure no one could surprise me." He slowly looked back at her. "You've surprised me every day." Mia looked down. The confession felt strangely intimate. Not romantic. Not yet. Just honest. A loud knock echoed through the house. Marco entered carrying a thick folder. His normally composed expression had disappeared. "Boss." Luca stood immediately. "What happened?" "We found the leak." Every bodyguard inside the room turned. Marco placed several photographs on the coffee table, one after another. Hospital security footage, satellite image, financial records, phone logs. Finally, a photograph of a middle-aged hospital administrator. "He sold your hospital floor plans." Mia frowned. "To who?" Marco answered quietly. "Moretti." Luca picked up the photograph. No anger crossed his face, only disappointment. He had 3 daughters. Marco nodded. They threatened them. Silence. He talked. Mia watched Luca closely. She expected rage, retribution, orders. Instead, he placed the photograph back onto the table. "Get his family out." Marco blinked. The daughters? All of them. New identities. New city. What about him? Luca stared at the fire. He made a terrible decision, but he made it trying to save his children. Another long pause. He lives. Mia couldn't hide her surprise. I thought. She hesitated. You thought I'd kill him. He finished the sentence for her. She nodded. Wouldn't most mafia bosses? They would. You won't? No. Why? He looked at her quietly. Because someone once showed me mercy. The room became still. She realized he wasn't describing a strategy. He was describing a wound. Marco excused himself. The bodyguards quietly followed. Soon, only Mia and Luca remained again. She picked up one of the photographs left on the table, a security image, taken from the hospital. It showed Luca kneeling beside her unconscious body. She frowned. There are hundreds of these? Thousands. And they're all over the internet? Yes. She looked at another, then another. Each image showed something different. Him shielding her, him carrying her, him refusing to leave the ambulance. She swallowed. You really stayed all night. He looked away. Yes. You told me you left. I lied. Why? I didn't want you to feel responsible. She laughed softly. That plan didn't work. No, it didn't. Her smile slowly faded. Can I ask you something else? You can ask anything. Will I ever get my life back? The question hit him harder than any bullet. Because he didn't know. He walked toward the window. Rain traced slow lines across the glass. Finally, I'll do everything I can. That's not an answer. No, it isn't. She joined him at the window. So answer me honestly. He closed his eyes. When Victor Moretti decides someone matters, he doesn't stop. Herr Hart Zang. So I'll always be running? I won't let that happen. She turned sharply. You keep saying that. Because it's true. You can't promise that. His voice remained calm. I already did. Before either of them could speak again. A sharp electronic beep echoed through the house. Every security monitor lit up at once. Marco's voice thundered from downstairs. Boss. Movement. Bodyguards flooded into position. Luca crossed the room in seconds. What sector? North tree line. How many? Marco zoomed the thermal camera. One? Just one? Everyone frowned. Only one heat signature. Walking slowly toward the house. Unarmed. No attempt to hide. No backup visible. The figure stopped exactly 50 yards from the front gate. A woman, early 60s, white raincoat, hands raised. No weapons, no fear. One of the bodyguards whispered, could be a trap. Luca nodded. It probably is. Yet, something felt wrong. The woman wasn't looking at the guards. She wasn't looking at the mansion. She was looking directly at him, as if she already knew him. I know you're there, Luca. Her voice carried through the rain. Strong, clear. I came alone. No one moved. She slowly reached into her coat. Half the rifles clicked off safety. She froze immediately. I'm taking out a photograph. Very carefully. She removed an old, rain-stained photograph. Even from the security monitor, Luca's breathing changed. It was impossible. The picture showed a young woman smiling on the very dock outside. His mother, standing beside, the stranger now waiting beyond the gate. Marco looked at Luca in disbelief. You know her? Luca whispered something no one had heard him say in 20 years. Aunt Alina. Every person in the room froze. Luca had once told Marco. His entire family had died. Every last one. Yet outside the gate stood a woman who should have been dead for more than 2 decades. Mia looked from the photograph to Luca's pale face, then quietly asked, Luca, who is she? He never took his eyes off the woman standing in the rain. His answer barely rose above a whisper. The only person who knows why my mother was really murdered. Outside, Elena slowly lowered the photograph, then spoke words that made the blood drain from Luca's face. You've been protecting the wrong woman. The rain fell harder. No one breathed. And Mia suddenly realized everything she believed about Luca's past might have been a lie.